Hello everybody, my name is Erik Teren Mullins, and today we're going to be checking out Flair's Fate Grand Order's Nero Claudius, the bridal edition. Being a 1/7 figure, she has all these extra little bells and whistles and doohickeys all over this costume. But despite this, has Flair really done a good job at mimicking the artwork it's based off of? I'd say kind of, but there is an anatomical part of her that they had done not super well, but we'll get into that later. Before I dive into this review, I'm just going to mention that this sword is extremely annoying. It kind of just rests on her shoulder. I get that it was somewhat like that in the artwork. It's always falling all over the place. You have to be really careful. She's actually very solid. However, just the slightest breeze and this sword goes flying from under her. So, keep that in mind. I personally don't even display the sword with her. I kind of move her arm down. That's right, her arm swivels. Look at that action. I just take this sword and I place it on top of a framed illustration that I have from the Fate Extella series. Her base is clear, it has a bunch of little speckles of miniature silver confetti molded into it. We have a lovely little pink design that goes around her, where we then have Saber and Nero Claudius Bride written down near the front bottom. I don't know what to say about this. The base here is like really whatever. On one hand, it's transparent, so you could probably put a light under her. On the other hand, I find it's just too simplistic and boring, though I'll take this any day over a crummy black round nothing base. The bottom is hollowed out. She has metallic bolts in both of her feet, and they are both very solid. Her shoes are done with a lovely white gloss, and this beautiful gloss baby blue heel. It looks nice. It's just as a design concept, it's the only place on her that has that color. I don't know why she doesn't have it anywhere else. Maybe somewhere in the flowers. Then again, maybe they just did their homework, and the whole concept of having this color here is for that classical wedding, there's something blue to be added. This has nothing to do with the figure. This is an aesthetic choice created by the initial designer of this costume. Her feet and stockings are actually matte, well shaded, and they really go into the shoes nicely. And up into these zippy bell-bottom thigh highs that are super zippy, super bell-bottom, and thigh as high as the thigh can high. These things are tremendously loaded with detail, sculpt work. The paint job on it is okay, not incredible, by all means not bad. I love the attention to detail that we get on the zipper part that's opened, and even the zipper buckle piece itself has a nice little hole cut through it. The shading here is a little bit messy, as we get into these lovely white gold bordered clips that go around her calf and right on top of her knee. These things look really nice. I personally would have liked the indentation to be a little stronger on the sculpt work, especially for the loop fabric where we see the belted fabric going into. It doesn't really feel like it's going into it that well. It just feels like molded and then painted on top. But from a shelf, it looks good. We have some lovely stretches and folds in the fabric behind the knee as it goes up into the thigh area that cuts off into an interesting V-shaped design. Her skin bevels out ever so slightly here, not too much, which is nice because it reflects how thin this character is. However, on her right leg, she's got this little garter belt that connects into this other piece of white shaded with nice stretches leading up into the clip design. Her skin here is very soft. We get a little tiny bit of shading around the edges, but really not that much. Her behind is very shapely, nice, but not noticeable because of how much she's got going on with this poofed up dress. The dress is being held together by her lovely, super thick, epic belt. I'm really a fan of thick, wide belts. I just think they look cool. And this belt looks terrific. I love how the metallic piece that we have in the front actually cuts off for the section of the plastic to make it look like it clips into this part. Clever use of mold lines in order to hide it well. And is it even a mold line when it's part of the fabric of its creation and function? Ugh. The belt itself looks lovely. It's quite a focal point on the figure, considering it's got a strong brown going all around it, a white design with a nice gold trim, and more zippity zipper pieces that she has on her belt along the front. I like the little zipper pieces. I think they look nice, so having them all over her design is cute. You can see her lovely coattail dress pieces here bunched up along the top as it's being held in place by the belt. We get a minor amount of shading here. First piece to pop out from under her belt is about a 30% transparent white clear piece of plastic that has a lovely golden design going all around it. We have a little trim going along the outside to make it just feel a little more bridal, high class, regal. And the paint job here is very well done. only minor blemishes here and there, and nothing you're necessarily going to notice while she's on a shelf. And even then, it's on the back, so I guess you'd need to have a mirror as well. The coattails are freaking awesome. They look so beautiful, very well sculpted, nice shading here. I love the fire singes that we get all across. This is the sort of thing I would have liked to see all over this figure. On her sleeves, on her bridal crown, along the edges of the front of her chest, on the tips of her bell bottoms. They should have used this design everywhere. It is so cool, it would have looked nice. The fact that it's only in one part here makes you think that maybe she's running away from a fire and these long coattails are the only things that got caught by it, I guess? This whole figure's design has a lot of different cues here and there. Wait a minute. We're not here to talk about the design choices. We're here to talk about the figure. I keep going off topic on that. This figure's design really does have a lot of cool and interesting facets to it. The folds in plastic and the lovely warmer colors that we get singeing their way up and carves through are nice on these coattails. Looks beautiful from the front, the side, the back. It just looks nice all around. As we go up into her body, which is very slender, it has a lovely little curve to it that makes her feel more sassy and confident. Nero being an incredibly confident individual, this really does feel like her. We have a whole bunch of stretches, cuts, and folds throughout the fabric here, and this really does an excellent job at mimicking somewhat what the artwork was going for. On her right hip, we can see the circular garter piece that connects up into her bodysuit, and there's these lovely belts here with a nice gold trim to them, the unity that all the belts on this figure seem to have, which is just excellent. This awesome, defining, strong zipper going along the center of her bodysuit, it actually feels like it's holding everything nicely together. And it's done in the same fashion as the one on her legs, so it's just a great callback overall. On her back, there's actually a cutout to this suit, showing off her behind, which is quite spicy, but really not noticeable. It's extremely hard just to take pictures of this. I get that Nero had that little cutout along the bottom of her back in her initial costume design, so they really wanted to introduce it on this bridal suit, and despite it being really spicy and quite enticing, you just really don't see it because her veil goes so far down. I would have had her veil be a little more dynamic, flowing in the wind perhaps, so we get a nicer view of her back in general. And here's where I have a bit of an issue with this figure. In the initial illustration, when we get to her chest, her top is going up just a little bit more, and her chest is actually sinking into it more realistically. On this figure, it's just two very circular, round, unrealistic balloons, and though I don't really mind this with a lot of figures, it's not like that in the illustration. And because of the way they chose to do it on this figure, her top on the chest just goes down a little too low, where now anatomically we're missing parts of her body that we would for sure see at this point. And this isn't an H figure, these pieces don't remove, and that's not what they're trying to sell here. I personally would have put it higher by 4mm, so objectively, it's just much too low. Subjectively, some of you might really enjoy this, not really care, just look at it and be like, whatever, from a shelf, she does look gorgeous. It's just, as a professional illustrator, every time I look at this figure, it always kind of bugs me. Moving on. Her chest is very well sculpted, everything looks nice, soft, round, and despite it missing two things to make it more anatomically correct, it is very well done. Her left shoulder looks very beautiful, where her right one actually looks nice going upwards, where the armpit area here is very faint, not overly defined, and it makes it look soft. Her arms sure are arming. Okay, so her left one is static, as most statues should be. Pearlized white here, colder colors used for the shading, and we actually have a repeat of this pearlization on her socks or stockings. It's so faint and minute that it really doesn't pop, not like the sleeves do. So it makes the sleeves really feel like they're just coming out of nowhere with this colorization and reflectiveness. They should have made all the belts pearlized. That way they would have popped out over the rest of the fabric from the clothing that's on here. Every time you have light shining on her, the sleeves pop out so much in comparison to the rest of her. The sculpt work, however, is absolutely fantastic. All the nice design lines look really good, and the level of folds in the fabric look really pretty too. With the giant bell design that they got flaying out at the ends of the sleeves, they put in the work here and carved designs along the inside as well. Where we then see her forearm plugged in there, it's not plugged in particularly well, but you really gotta look in there, and the odds of you seeing this are extremely low, even put up high on a shelf. As for her right sleeve, this thing is on a hinge. It's super annoying. It pops off if you're not careful. If you move it around too much, I feel like maybe it would end up getting loose over time, but this isn't the sort of thing you're gonna do that with. Essentially, they have it so that you can have her with her arm out, and you put the sword curve in here through her elbow. This It's terrible. It doesn't plug in there, this thing falls out all the time like I had mentioned earlier, and also just having something like this, if for any reason your figure is slightly moving on a computer or perhaps in a display that you walk by every day, this is going to shear off some of the plastic over time. It's kind of sharp. This part wasn't really thought out well or executed properly, and I get that the idea was probably like, oh, you could remove it, that'd be cool. I don't care. And because of this, I don't get to display her with the sword, which kind of sucks. Instead, I just opt for sliding her hand down next to her hip to give her a more sassier, imposing, confident kind of look. That suits her so well. We get the same level of design, folds and bends in the fabric here, looks terrific. However, where we see the forearm going into this belled out design, it lies very nicely due to the bend at her elbow. I'd also like to mention that the inside of these bell pieces are not done with a pearlized white. Okay. The hands look absolutely lovely. Her left one feels very natural and aggressive. It looks like she's putting a bit of anime muscle into those fingers, while her right one has an extremely odd It's very uncomfortable to put your hand in a position like this. I don't know why this was done like this in the first place, because it's not even how it's supposed to have been done based off of the original illustration, which her hands are actually cupping her waist quite naturally. Little bit of stretches in the fabric for her gloves here. It's beautiful. Her neck collar is... wow. I freaking love it. I think it's so gorgeous. I do have a couple of gripes towards it as well. The cute lock with the chains looks so cool. However, the metal they used for the chains here is like a dark bolter gun metal in comparison to all the lighter metals we have everywhere else. So like the light blue that we have on the soles of her shoes, or the pearlized sleeves that she's rocking, this figure has all sorts of one-shot things that don't give us a nice coherence throughout her whole design. This kinda isn't that fun. But maybe I'm just being too harsh. I do really love designing my own characters, and I find that coherence is really important. So for some of you out there, it might not be. So I guess I'll just leave it at that. Interestingly enough, her neck is plugged into her body, but not the head. It's actually sculpted with the head and the back part of her hair. So you don't get any kind of mold lines throughout it. It's very well done. Her ears look absolutely terrific, very cute. And her face structure is amazing. I know that the initial artwork, everything is sharp, very pointy all over the place. And personally, I like things that are usually rounder. I'm just into that. That's just a personal art style preference. And they rounded a lot of her sharp corners off on this figure, and I do kind of like it. I think this makes the face very cute. We have a lovely gloss for her lips, and it pops out extremely well even from a shelf. It's immaculately done. She has a very sharp nose, and the sculpt of everything here is so well done that depending on how your lighting is, it does give off that nice artwork vibe. Her eyes, where usually I would probably complain about them being mildly too separated from one another, aren't. That's how the initial art style is, and this figure did a really good job at mimicking that. We have matte eyelashes, while the eyes themselves are extremely hyper glossed out, and I'm very happy about this. I'd say the eyebrows could have been ever so slightly darker so they pop out just a bit more. It's hard to see them with all the hair in the way. And the hair! Oh my goodness. Okay, this hair is very well sculpted. Essentially, it's three pieces, one being the main head, then we have the second piece that has all the bangs along the front. We have a beautiful gradient here. I personally would have loved to see the anime shine, but the artwork doesn't have it, so this is fine. Then we have that cute little antenna popping out the front. It looks like it's in there pretty well. The back part of her hair looks like a slightly lighter yellow. This might be because of the fact that it's painted on top of whatever plastics that her skin are made out of. I would have liked to see more shading here, make things just a bit darker, especially with some of the sculpt work and the lines. This way things would have stuck out just a bit more, or matched up a little nicer with her bangs. And her hair is all getting pulled back into this lovely little wedding crown veil doohickey. I don't know the actual terminology for this thing. If you know the name of what this thing is called, please write so down in the comment section below. Oh, Erik. She has a beautiful little crown of flowers here. However, there's little to no shading on it whatsoever, which is a disappointment because they kind of all blend into one another when looking at her from a shelf. At least we have nice little yellow paint apps in the center of the flower. I mean, it's better than nothing. There's actually some green under here, and I like that. It's very cute. It at least helps separate the flowers from the piece of fabric along the back of the head, which is nicely sculpted, little stretches in the fabric here. It's a cute bun, or mochi, where it then ties off into this lovely bow that really, really is missing shading. This thing should have been shaded hardcore. I'm disappointed that we don't have much on here because, again, much like the flowers, it all seems to blend into one another when seen on a shelf or from a distance. But up close, it's very well sculpted. And finally, we come up to the flowing veil-y piece itself, which is similar to the one that we had at the bottom of her dress. Same gold accents, same designs, same everything, with exception to the top part, quite a few circular designs on it, but no gold here, and they should have absolutely put gold on some of this. It's weird that it's not on there. It feels like it was a mistake and they just forgot to put on those paint applications in the first place. I can understand that as a design, this might just be little cutouts and part of the lacy wafting look that it has. I guess it's just because there's so much here and the lovely gold that we have down near the bottom really makes some of these things pop that perhaps they should have just put a little bit of gold accents here and there. I bet you thought that was it. That it was all over. But guess what? There's this sword that I almost forgot to talk about. It feels like such an afterthought in the designer's perspective. Clearly an afterthought for me as well. Almost forgot all about it. This thing has some lovely shading to it. We have some matte metallics. I think that maybe the orangey red line that we have should have been done in maybe a gloss metallic so it sticks out just a bit more. That would have been cool. The handle is pretty simplistic, but you know, the whole thing does look kind of like the artwork. The weapon itself does feel really solid. And that's a good thing because this thing is most probably going to drop, slip, and fall all over the place off your shelves consistently if you're not careful with it. Upon her release, she was going for 14,800 yen. Like, okay, you know what, that's I would say that this figure is worth that. She actually had a second release and they didn't bump up the price, so thank you, Flair. That was really kind of you. Despite all my gripes and nitpicks that I have with her, at that price, she's worth it. If you're going to be paying a lot more for her because you love this bridal design, then I would suggest you look at more reviews for the figure and a bunch more pictures because I don't know if I would be willing to pay that much more. Also, just to mention that this design of her bridal outfit is based off of the video game Grand Order, not the Extella video game, which is a totally different bridal dress, and there are tons of figures for that one as well. And despite the fact that the material from her chest doesn't cover enough of her chest, and this sword is freaking annoying, and there's tiny little things here or there, I still really love this figure. I think she looks phenomenal. At that price, very great, but it's just that I find she just exudes the personality of Nero Claudius from the anime, from the game. Like, she just shines. It's pretty well executed in that regard, and it's part of the reason why I really adore this figure so much. Hopefully my review today helped you decide whether you're still on the fence of getting this figure or not. Do you have multiple Nero figures? Is Nero your favorite servant from the Fate franchise? I do really like her, but I think I lean a little more towards Tamamo or Semiramis. You are just so cool in Apocrypha. If you like my video just a little bit, it doesn't cost much to heroically summon that like. Slash up that subscribe, and ding, that notification bell. It goes a crazy long way at helping support my channel, and I super appreciate it. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye! And more and more zipper pieces, and more zippity zipper pieces that she has on her belt along the front. I like zippy. I like zippy. I like zipper handle. I like the little zipper pieces. I think they look nice, so having them all over her design is cute.